You're listening to Addressing Gettysburg.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this special episode of Addressing Gettysburg called Why Gettysburg? And this is Why Gettysburg number 2. What is Why Gettysburg? Okay, let me start with that. So, what is Why Gettysburg? It's a question that I used to ask when we would have someone on the show for the first time. I would just start off with that, why Gettysburg? And they would answer it. And most people answered it on a more emotional level. A good number of people would answer it on a very fact-based, clinical level. Well, all the roads led to Gettysburg and the two armies were in the area and blah, blah, blah. But like I said, most people were more emotional about it. And in those emotions, there's things such as aesthetic beauty and nostalgia and an empathy for what the soldiers went through, and all these things kind of mixed together. And it's an interesting thing to ask people and to hear the answers to, because of course they're all different, but they're very much the same. And not in a bad way. I think it's a good thing. It's what draws us Gettys nerds here to Gettysburg. So why don't we start to listen to some of the submissions that our patrons made. On Patreon, I put out questions for, various things like questions for an Ask a Guide, or I asked people to submit a video of answering the question, why Gettysburg? Of them answering the question, why Gettysburg? And so here are about 5 of the submissions that we got that were on video. And this is it. So enjoy.
Hi there, Addressing Gettysburg. I am Jamie. I just moved here. Like literally just moved here. Closed on my house on Friday. I've been trying to move here for a good part of the last 2 decades and finally had a chance to do it. So, why Gettysburg? Because every time I drove past here, even as a kid, it felt very calming and relaxing to me in a weird way. I love history. I love putting myself in other people's shoes, and this is probably not the best place to do that, but also is the best place to do that. So that is my why Gettysburg, because I love to be here in the present moment, and I would have been probably scared to death back then. But now I'm learning where the Kenny's is and the Weiss Market and everything else, because I literally just moved here and have done nothing but clean for 3 days. So I'm glad I'm here. Thanks, Gettysburg. It's been great so far.
Well, welcome to Gettysburg, Jamie. I hope you enjoy it. And congratulations on your patience for waiting for 20 years or so and finally getting the chance to come here and the courage to take the chance once it presented itself to you. So Jamie hit on a couple of things. Calming and relaxing, she said. Even as a kid, it was calming and relaxing. And that is one of the things that I use to describe my love of Gettysburg. It calms me, it relaxes me. But how peculiar is that we find a place known for horror, just pure horror and terror and death and gore and misery and ugliness. Such a place makes people today feel relaxed and calm. And I always say that I think I moved back here because I had to figure out, my life's mission is to figure out why that is. Why does it calm us? And I'm afraid to figure out the answer too soon, because I'm convinced the day I do, the next morning I wake up dead. So I don't want to answer that question too soon, because I'm having a nice time and I don't want to check out just yet. So anyway, she says that, but she also says something about how it's a great place to come to put herself in other people's shoes. And she says that it is a great place, but it isn't a great place, or it isn't a great place, but it actually is. And I know exactly what she's talking about. When things in my life personally, I'm feeling like I'm up against, an insurmountable challenge. Sometimes I'll go and I'll pick a spot on the battlefield that is particularly known to have had a horrendous fighting and carnage on it. And I sit there and maybe I'll read about that particular action, or maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just sit there and just use my imagination. But the lesson I come away with all the time is, what are you bitching about? Whatever you have to deal with is nothing compared to what these guys had to deal with. And not just here at Gettysburg, not just during that particular action, but throughout the entire war. And this, I think of with all of our soldiers in all of our wars. How can you bitch and moan about these little things when these guys had real hardships to face? So I think I know what you're talking about, or at least that's my definition of putting myself in other people's shoes. And I come away with a resolve to tackle the problem that I'm having and move on, because it is a lot easier than having to go through what they went through. And so, yeah, so that's it. And like I said, Jamie, congratulations on moving here. Welcome to Gettysburg. I hope I bump into you in town sometime. And if you want to know the supermarkets that have the better prices, just send me an email and I'll tell you where to go. Also, the restaurants to go to when it's tourist season and you don't want to wait 45 minutes for a table. All right, so let's move on to the next person. This is our buddy Rich.
Hello, Matt and Eric and everybody else with Addressing Gettysburg. Rich Schneider from York County, Pennsylvania. Matt, you asked why Gettysburg. For me, it was a really special place from a young kid growing up. My dad would always take my brother and my sister and me over to the battlefield when we were young. When I retired in 2016, I did a little genealogy and a little ancestry research and found out that I had an ancestor that fought there that really no one in my family had ever talked about. He was a sergeant with Company B of the 99th Pennsylvanians. I've just taken a real interest in reading as much as I can about the battle, learning about not only the men that fought there, but everything that they had to go through and everything that the town went through and the citizens went through. It's just a really amazing place. And I really feel fortunate to be a part of your group. Take care.
Thanks, Rich. We feel fortunate to have you as a part of our group. I've met Rich a couple times as he comes out for our Get Out of the Car tours and sat and talked with him. And he's a really nice guy. And we're glad to have people like him associated with what we do. Nostalgia is another thing that I hear from people. Mom and dad took me here when I was a kid, and me and dad would, run across the fields or climb on the cannons or climb on the Warren statue, which is verboten. But they have good childhood memories attached to the place. And some people that keep coming here into their own adulthood and maybe bring their kids here are not coming here particularly out of an interest in the history. It's just going to this place where they have these good memories attached. And I get that. We all get that, I'm sure. But then a lot of those people along the way might become interested in the history as an adult. Because, things change. When you become an adult, all the things you used to roll your eyes at when your parents or aunts and uncles or grandparents or any other adult would say them while you were a kid, now it makes sense. And now you want them. And so, when I was a kid and we would come and visit places like Gettysburg, any kind of historical place, my dad would sit and read every word on the markers and the plaques. And my sister and I would be bored to tears and come on, let's go. And he wouldn't go until he had read everything on there. And then he would say, yo, did you see this? And then this is what happened. He would explain what he just saw. Well, now I find myself doing that, and I find the value in those markers and plaques. There's so much that you can get out of them, not just what they say, but also sometimes what they don't say. I'm thinking of one particular marker in Harper's Ferry that's particularly odd. But anyway, nostalgia is a great way to get you to come back, and hopefully along the way, if you weren't interested in the actual history, you would become interested in the history. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here we have, so thank you, Rich, by the way. Here we have someone who is, his name says it all. Ladies and gentlemen, John Reynolds.
Hi, my name is John, and to answer the question why Gettysburg, I think comes down to community for me. That's why I always will love the battle. I always will study it. But I think the community that surrounds the battle now is such a healthy thing for us, at least for me. It's great for me to interact with people, to get different viewpoints, to get different perspectives, and to make friends. Unfortunately, I live a bit far away from going to the battle all the time. But when I am there, I feel like I really do have good connections with the people I meet. And I think that it affords us an opportunity in a day and age where we're self-isolating and staying away from each other to kind of get out, find someone with a common interest, and talk with them, become friends with them, laugh with them, argue with them, get, again, different perspectives. And I think the community that builds itself around Gettysburg, through addressing Gettysburg, for example, even is important. And I think that's the allure to me. Obviously, the history and walking the ground is awesome, but it's not as awesome for me unless there's someone there that I can have some discourse with, that I could shoot an idea to, or just talk with, because I think that's what it's there. History is to be learned, but learning history means nothing if you can't share it with others. And for me, that's why Gettysburg.
I love that one. Community. He talks about community. When we started addressing Gettysburg, I'm still living back in New Jersey. My best friend and I got the ball rolling on it. And as we were sitting there writing, I forgot what he was writing. He was writing something, and he said, "What do you want to get out of this?" And I thought for a second, and I said, well, I want to build a community of nerds that get together often and learn about the battle together, and maybe people will make friends with each other in the process. But really, it was about fomenting an environment, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, just a feeling, I guess, of being welcomed, and kind of like it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to ask a dumb question, because everybody's learning. And even the people that are a little more learned in the group understand, because we remember what it was like to be learning and to be afraid to ask a question. And so we don't mock. We don't, make somebody feel bad because they asked a question that, well, you should have known that. Like, we don't do that. We do that, or we don't. We want people to feel like they belong here, and they belong with other people who are learning about the battle. It's strange. I don't know why there's a competitiveness amongst students of the battle. I mean, I guess I get it psychologically, like they're very insecure and small, but most people don't need to be that way. And so John, for example, we met John. He came out and took a tour with, I can't remember if it was Charlie Fennell or Bob. I think it was Bob Steenstra. And Eric and I went along, and it was on Culp's Hill, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. We got to know John a bit. And anytime John comes back, he's always welcome to contact us and go out, do whatever we're going to do. Or if he comes back, on a third Saturday of the month between April and October, he can catch one of our Get Out of the Car tours. But community is very important. It's a great way to learn. I'm a person who dies when he's solo. I die slowly when I'm solo, but if I have at least one other person to bounce things off of, to work with, I can thrive. And I know a lot of other people are that way. And I've heard from the people that have been participating in everything that we have to offer, and they say that that's what they get out of it. And that means so much to me, because that's what I said all those years ago when Pete and I were brainstorming in his kitchen, and he asked me what I wanted to get out of it. And I said community, and then I hear people talking about community and feeling like they're part of a community when they do stuff with us, addressing Gettysburg, etc. Cliff is next. Cliff out in California. I wonder what he has to say.
So I'm 16 years old. It's my first time on the East Coast, and we're at Gettysburg. We had gone back there for the 135th Manassas, first Manassas event, that was going to be my first big East Coast event, in the hobby. I'd started reenacting about a year before, and I'm a hardcore authentic guy now, so I know it was like a cheesy event in retrospect, but I was super stoked to be out there back then. Anyways, of course, we worked Gettysburg into the trip, and we had gotten into town, I feel like later in the day, so, we weren't able to really see much. And we're at the old Howard Johnson's Hotel, which was like right across the street from the old visitor center, kind of by McDonald's, General Pickett's Buffet, I guess. Anyways, so we're there, and I just can't sleep. And finally, I just give up. Everybody else is asleep, but I throw on my clothes, and, I'm 16 years old. I just go outside in the middle of the night. It was like 11 or 12 at night. Now, it's pouring rain, which, being from California, I'm just not used to during the summer. So that's kind of weird. So, I go across the street and I walk over to the Cyclorama building. I don't even think I knew it was a Cyclorama building at the time. I just saw this building there with this open catwalk, the old one where it juts out south. So you're able to look over the high water mark from like the same perspective as the Cyclorama is painted in. So I go out there to the end of the catwalk, and I'm just out there for like a half an hour or an hour just by myself in the rain. And it's like misty out. It's misty, but despite the cloud cover, it's lit up enough to where I can really see around. And I was just so taken with the place. That really sealed the deal for me. I've studied so many other battles and campaigns, like in depth, like for years. But man, I just can't get over Gettysburg. And I feel like that's why that catwalk that night, that's, for me, that's why Gettysburg.
On the catwalk. Yeah, on the catwalk. You finish the line. He speaks about, again, some nostalgia, but that time, that there's that one time, your first time sometimes for a lot of people. For me, it was my first time here. And you can remember where you were, you can remember the weather, you can remember the view that caught you. There is something aesthetically pleasing about this place. Sure, the history, the stories, all that stuff that played out on the ground and in the buildings in town. Of course that matters, and of course that grabs people. But those stories are in Fredericksburg. They're in countless other places that were the scene of Civil War events. And I don't run into people that are that, I don't run into as many people who are that taken with another place as they are here. Antietam, maybe. Antietam is a great place to go to too, Sharpsburg. But he's talking about, standing on the catwalk of the old Cyclorama Center and looking out across that field. And when you look out across that field, no matter whether it's, on a July 3rd or whether it's December 1st or January 12th, it doesn't matter the date or time of year. When you stand on that field and you think about what happened, any field here, and you think about what happened there, and really just shut everything out, put your phone down for a freaking minute, you can't help but feel some kind of an emotion when you're doing that. And it grabs everybody. Well, it doesn't grab everybody, but it grabs a lot of the people that keep coming here. For me, my first time coming to Gettysburg was senior year of high school. I was taking a military history class. We watched the movie for I think the week before our trip, and we took our trip here to Gettysburg. It was a day. It was just a 3.5 hour drive down from Jersey. We watched the movie again on the bus, and then when we got here, we stopped at the old visitor center, picked up our guide, and the guide guided us to the battle. And I remember coming through the town, which was pretty cool. It was a cool little old town. I always liked old towns. And I remember driving up Buford Avenue and cresting the ridge, Seminary Ridge, right there. And as we came over, right by Mrs. Thompson's house, I looked out at the field in front of me, and to this day, I kind of almost get choked up about it. It's something literally reached into my soul and tickled it. And from that moment on, I've been obsessed with this place. The beauty of that site for the first time got me. And then the rest of the day, going around with that guide and hearing him tell the stories of what happened where. And I think also because I'm a kind of a visual person and I'm a big movie buff, I think because a lot of the things I was looking at looked exactly like they did in the movie, because they shot it here, that also really helped to kind of, just make it all come together in my mind. But I remember going home that day and I said to my dad, "Dad, we got to go to this place." Because we had never been here before. We had family in Virginia, still do. And when we would go and visit them, we would always go to Manassas or Fredericksburg or Chancellorsville, something like that. And those are nice battlefields and interesting stories. But they never moved me like Gettysburg did. And so my father and I decided to make an annual trip out of it. And we would come for the reenactment weekend. And we did that for, I don't know, maybe about 8 years or so. Almost 10, I guess. Yeah, about almost 10 years. And then finally, I decided I'm moving down here to open Getty's Bike Tours, and that's what I did. And so, so that one field trip, I remember I wrote an email to my teacher, Mr. Ferresso was his name. He was the teacher who brought us down here. And it was cool because back in those days, you were allowed to actually teach. And so he was a reenactor, and he had a uniform from every war that we were involved in, from the Revolution up to, I think it was, at that time, it must have been the Gulf War. And he was allowed to bring in the weaponry as well, which no way in hell you'd be able to do that today. But we were able to hold it, and we were able to touch these things, even though they were reproductions, most of them. They had some real things. But even though they were reproductions, we were able to touch these things and make a connection to our past. And so I wrote him an email, and I told him, I was like, because of you, I am happy because I live in Gettysburg and I do a podcast about Gettysburg, and I just want to thank you. And he wrote back, "Who the hell is this?" So let's go now to Alex. He's our final one. Let's see what Alex has to say, and then we'll wrap things up for you.
Why Gettysburg? Well, for me, there are really two reasons. The first is this connection to the past that you feel at Gettysburg that you don't feel anywhere else, I think. As Chamberlain said after the battle, after the war, here people come to see where and by whom great things were suffered and done for them. That's pretty flowery language and perhaps too sentimental for a battle, but it's nonetheless true to me. When you go there, you feel this deep and abiding connection to those that fought over the future of the country. And specifically, I feel grateful to those that carried our flag and stood for the Union. And in some ways, it still dictates our actions today. And what they did can still guide us and does still guide us as we make decisions about the future. And that connection, past and present, is just palpable at Gettysburg in a different way. The second reason is personal. I'm sure many people listening have very similar stories to mine, but my dad brought me to Gettysburg when I was 4 years old. And from then on, we went every year without fail at least once. Sometimes we came from Tennessee 2 or 3 times in all kinds of weather and seasons. And for every place in the battlefield that's etched into our national memory, there's a personal one for me. I remember taking hikes across the length of Pickett's Charge, and my dad carrying me back on his shoulders, went back to get to the car. I remember going on hikes across the battlefield and having a picnic lunch at our favorite tree that was at the corner of the Wheatfield Road and the Emmitsburg Road, there across from the peach orchard. It was the first place I ever drove a car. It was the first place my wife and I ever went on a vacation together. Gettysburg is not just some far-off ancient battlefield to me. It's more akin to a home. It's just as much a part of me as my native East Tennessee. And that's why Gettysburg.
Very good. You know, I would say the way people drive today, I would not be picnicking on the corner of any road because you have a very good chance of somebody just losing control and driving over you. But back in those days, people were a little bit more responsible and capable drivers. Okay, Alex had a lot in there, and a lot of it, it's all good. It's all good stuff. The first thing he mentions Chamberlain and what he wrote about the place. I think the poetry of Gettysburg, from the participants, particularly him, Chamberlain, there's something about that helps to capture the public's imagination from the get-go. So that was one thing Gettysburg had working for it. But he also kind of talks about, kind of a patriotic gratitude for the men who fought under the United States flag at the time. And I'm certain there are plenty Southerners who feel the same way about, a gratitude that their ancestor, fought under the flag for what they believed in. It's a very touchy thing to talk about the Civil War nowadays. For me, I've never looked at history as something to get angry about in the present day, because I didn't have a dog in the fight. My family wasn't here. One branch of my family goes back to the colonial era, but we can't find anything about them really to let us know what the deal was during the war. But I'm able to look at it, rather dispassionately, even though I'm very passionate about it. But anyway, so there's a patriotic gratitude that people have coming here, and I totally get that. My grandfather fought in World War II. We used to talk a lot about it, and I consider him to be a part of a legacy. He was the first generation. He was a first generation Irish American, and so every time I'm near where the Irish Brigade fought or something like that, even though as far as I know we have no ties to the Irish Brigade in our family, it makes me think of my grandfather, because he was very proud that he was an Irish person whose parents came here when there were signs that said no Irish need apply, and he went on to be able to own property and raise his children and put them through college, and that was a very proud thing for him. And so he's part of a legacy, I guess is what I'm saying. And what was the other thing he was saying? Oh yeah, nostalgia again. He had memories, with his dad and his family, picnicking and going across Pickett's Charge and things like that. And I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine a while ago about, he was toying with whether or not to bring his kids down or if they were too young. And from the get-go, my stance on it was, you're never too young. It's amazing the memories that I can remember, that when I really do the math, I'm like, how is that possible that I remember this because I was 4 or 5 or something like that? But the point is, it's not even about making a memory of when they're 4 or 5, but it's about getting them into a habit and exposing them, because they may not remember what happens when they're 5 years old, when they're 25 years old, but when they're 6 years old, they'll remember. And so I always tell people, if you think your kids wouldn't enjoy it, it would be, they wouldn't get it or something like that. You're underestimating your children, I believe, because it's amazing what kids pick up. And I say this as someone who sees people every day bringing children of all ages, and I see children of all ages connecting with something. There's something here that they can find that connects them, even if it's they want to go and climb on a cannon, which you shouldn't let them do, but whatever. They're getting interested in it. They're getting involved. They're having a tactile experience with Gettysburg. It's a start. So bring your family, and please bring them out on our Get Out of the Car tours too. Folks, I want to thank you for indulging me in this little episode here. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free, if you want to send in a Why Gettysburg, we're going to do these every maybe year or twice a year or something like that. So if you want to get some stuff in for Why Gettysburg 3 when it comes out, just send a video to matt@addressinggettysburg.com. And hopefully, if we have any trouble, we'll figure out a way to get it so that you can send it to me. Just keep it no more than 2 minutes long. Keep it short. I don't want to edit you. So be concise, pithy, if you will, I believe is the word. And that's it. So thanks all. Hope you're having a good day. And we'll talk to you later.